Ayo, artists and musicians.
Who, us?
Yeah, do you want your own vinyl records?
Yeah, but I can't order 1,000 of them. Or wait like a year to get them. Yeah, we're going on tour in 2 months.
Check out our friends lathecuts.com. They'll make you vinyl singles in quantities as small as 50 copies and as quickly as 3 or 4 weeks.
Get out of here.
You heard me right. All their pricing is a la carte, and they can help you pick a package that fits your budget.
Okay, who we talk to about this?
You need to email my buddy Mike. His address is lathecuts@yahoo.com. And if you mention low profile, you'll get a 10% overrun on your order.
So if I order 50 records,
Mike's gonna send you 55.
if I order 75, I guess you would get 82 and a half.
Something like that. Remember, you gotta mention low profile to get that deal, and it won't be around forever.
What was the address again?
That's lathecuts@yahoo.com. Custom-made records in small quantities. Mention low profile to get a 10% overrun on your order.
And emailing now.
Howdy, y'all. I'm your host, Mark Lee Morrison, and this is the 65th episode of Low Profile. On today's episode, instead of our usual format, I've got a folklorist. Derek Piotr lives in Connecticut and was introduced to me by Dollar Country host Franklin Fantini, or Frank the Drifter, who you might remember from a bonus episode from October 2021. Derek has released several albums of experimental and electronic music this century, but in recent years has shifted his focus to collecting folk songs as remembered by, for a lack of better words, folks. He's traveled here and abroad collecting field recordings, which he'll be sharing with us today. I spoke with Derek last spring, asking him first about life in Connecticut, where he focuses most of his folklore work.
The best way I can describe Connecticut is that when I went to the Library of Congress and looked through their filing cabinet system by location, there was no folk music documented in their system from Connecticut. So we're kind of a dearth of folk tradition. But nevertheless, I've always had a huge love for, I guess, something that would happen before what people think of as folk. I have a real love for like roots music. And so a lot of that interest and passion took me to the Blue Ridge Mountains on the border of North Carolina and Tennessee. And so I've been working for the last 2.5 years with recordings from Avery County, North Carolina, from this family, the Bear family, and specifically Lena Bear Turbeville, who was just as good a singer as someone like Gene Ritchie or Texas Gladden, but for whatever reason got kind of lost to the annals of history. So I've been on like a rescue mission with some of these archival recordings of Lena and her family.
Can we play right now one of her songs?
I would go with her rendition of The House Carpenter.
Well met, my old true love. Well met, said he. Just returned from the salt, salt sea, and it's all for the love of thee. I could have married a king's daughter, and she would have married me. I slighted her and all of her gold, and it's all for the love of thee. If you could have married a king's daughter, I'm sure you are to blame. I have married a house carpenter, and I think he's a nice young man.
That's a song that was recorded a lot at the time, sort of right after the boon of accessible recording discs, so that, you know, it's more reliable than a wax cylinder, and right before the Second World War. So there was just a lot of stuff being taken in that frame of time, and so a lot of people sang The House Carpenter. So if anyone out there has a bent towards this kind of archival music, you will know that song pretty well. But you will also be able to tell pretty easily that Lena sings the hell out of it, and she does a very fine job.
So, beyond the digging through the Library of Congress archives, you've also begun collecting folk songs yourself, sort of in the spirit of, say, like the Lomaxes, but I'd like to think maybe not as evil.
I might refrain on that front, but yeah, I mean Lomax and the the gentleman that took Lena's family, Dr. Herbert Halpert, was a contemporary of Lomax, and I've seen letters exchanged between the two gentlemen. You've got Helen Harkness Flanders up here in New England. Again, it was a boon. You have to think that wax cylinders finally transformed sort of into the industry standard became acetate and aluminum discs, which were much more reliable, and it was right before the war broke out. And it's just a whole bunch of recordings being taken by various people all over North America, particularly North America, particularly the American South, but otherwhere, also New England and the Maritimes and whatnot. And I think that the reason I got into it is a lot of people are of the opinion that that was very much 100 years ago kind of endeavor, and that you can't collect much these days, and I'm sort of out to prove those people wrong. So I've been all over New England and the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I spent 4 months in Britain taking field recordings as well.
How do you get yourself into this situation of recording a stranger singing a folk song to you?
Well, it really varies. I mean, sometimes I have luck. I literally passed a gentleman on the street one day in York, England. I was on my way home. He just seemed like he'd know something neat, and I was like, no, don't do it. No, don't do it. That's weird. Don't introduce yourself. I wheeled myself around. Hi. I was like, my hunch won out and my whatever, and I said, I'm looking for folk music, and I can't tell you why, but you look like you might know something. And I felt terribly impolite doing this to a perfect stranger on the street. But are you familiar with the hymn, The Virgin Mary had a baby boy, and they said that his name was Jesus?
Right, yeah, that's familiar.
So we had a brief conversation, and he was explaining that when he was a child, he went to the West Indies with his mother, and then he sort of abruptly broke himself off, and he said, just wait a minute. And he ran up into his house, and he emerged with this thin blue book from Boozy and Hawkes. His mother had been a colleague of Edric Connor, and had published a book called was it Hymns and Spirituals of the West Indies? Edric Connor took The Virgin Mary Had a Baby Boy from this gentleman in the West Indies who was 92, and it was because of that Schirmer volume that it made it into the Cambridge Hymnal and then became a widely known hymn that people sing. So I met this gentleman who was the descendant of a woman who kind of made that song breach the mainstream.
The Virgin Mary had a baby boy, and they say that his name was Jesus. Yeah.
And that was pure intuition. So that's one way of getting into it. You just follow wild hunches, but it's also systematic. I'll go through, established and documented informants from the 30s and then try and locate their descendants. I think what I'm really after is the concept of a non-singer, which is a hard thing to sort of pin down, and I've gotten some flack for it being kind of a problematic term, because if someone's going to sing for you, obviously they're not a non-singer. But what I'm really looking for is someone who's aware of these folk traditions and has memory of songs that were orally transmitted, but never really did anything with them. Just had these memories kind of privately kept and could recite these songs, but never really shared them. Which is why I was so excited about the Edna Gibson recordings, because it feels very simpatico with what I'm sort of searching for, is this kind of private practice that was never put on stage or anything.
Yeah, and for the listener, if you don't listen all the time, Edna Gibson has come up a few times on the show before, just sort of in passing, and this is one of those moments. But she's a lady from Southern Oregon that I've been trying to track down her story because I just happened across her tapes in a thrift store, home recorded tapes from probably the 1980s, maybe 70s. And yeah, we'll let you hear a little bit of that right here.
I'll give me a home in Montana, a cowboy's bandana, and see how happy I'll be. Give me an old Dixie cabin I traveled all around, I've had a lot of fun. I've seen most everything to see beneath the sun. I've traveled east, I've traveled west, traveled through the plains that I love. The dust give me a home in Montana, a cowboy's bandana, and see how happy I'll be, and see how happy I'll be.
It's just really, really special when you find music that is not really intended for commercial reasons or even really artistic reasons. It's just music that people have inside them, and it happens to get documented.
That's pretty much what I try and generate. But I mean, Edna obviously selfied that whole situation.
Sure,
She recorded herself and her relative or neighbor or friend. It was Bud Hammond was on there too.
That was her. Yeah, that was her brother,
Ah,
Bud Hammond. Yeah.
yeah.
I was able to get in touch with her daughter, and just a few very brief message exchanges online. She doesn't seem to be terribly interested in going into it, but I'm still working on her. So I mostly all I got out of her is that, yes, that was her uncle singing with her mom.
Right, and by contrast, I had tremendous success with Lena's daughter. So you don't ever know what people are going to bring to what associations they're carrying around when you reach out like that. But I like to think I've been fairly successful looking for documented singers and then their descendants. I actually just met a woman who lives now in Connecticut, and her grandfather was documented as singing in Kingman, Maine, on a cylinder, but it was a pretty well preserved cylinder. And I wanted to do something with those recordings. And the Library of Congress suggested I reach out to the family, which was something I was doing anyway, so I was happy to find her. And we went to Panera Bread. She lives about an hour away from me, and she gave me photos and stories. It was really interesting to
Oh, wow.
be let into her grandfather's life.
A lot of your work seems to focus on like the life of the song and how songs evolve over time and through, maybe misremembered lyrics, memories, just the songs themselves grow and change and mutate as they get passed down through time.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, I'd be Nancy Drewing and would find like the great 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 grandfather's letter that had the original song lyrics, and you'd know the origin. But that doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. I mean, some of the earliest written down representation of some of the great child ballads was in the Percy Folio, and it was in terrible shape when it came to light, and someone was sort of going to work with it. And pages had been ripped out to start fires, and so half the songs were missing. So you can't really point the arrow backwards in time very accurately, but what you can sort of do is point it forwards and see, okay, this was a recording from 1939. What do people remember? And sometimes you don't play them the recording right away. You say, yeah, so I have, your mom used to sing, Blackjack Davy all the time. What version was it? What do you remember? And you see what has survived, and then you reward them with the recording of their mom, and they cry, and it's a beautiful thing. But I'm always interested in what people remember first. Lena's daughter, for instance, described Frankie and Johnny as the song that everyone sang in the movies, and I didn't think I was going to take it from her because I assumed she'd learned it from the movies, but I ended up recording her singing that song because she made it clear that she'd learned it before that, and she recognized it later.
She said she walked to the bartender, has my Johnny been here? He's my man, that he's doing me wrong. Anyway, she's hunting for him, and he walked up to the bar room, and the bar room said, I think he's gone. Anyway, he's gone to where that woman he's seeing is. I can remember that as the story in the song. It said, but he's my man, and he's doing me wrong. And something that she carries a pistol, and he begs her not to kill him, but she shoots him. But he was her lover, and that she was doing her wrong, and so she killed him. But now, the real killing was much more gory and bloody and bad. I mean, it was graphic. The true story of it, the true story of it, and her being taken down to the courthouse, and Harold could remember all of his people talking about them hanging Frankie Silvers down there at the courthouse, where it's every day when we go through Morgan, that's where they hung her.
You'd go right by it.
Yeah, every day Saturday, they picture always hung around the courthouse.
But it's to me, it's terribly that's a terribly important recording, because she's made the delineation that this came from inside the house, so to speak. It wasn't a modern media situation, and it was only later that she was like, oh yeah, that's the song of my people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tricky because TikTok and YouTube and iPads and phones and the inundation of the accessibility of media is tremendous now. And so to try and find people that, despite all that, have untarnished memories of songs that their family sang before the advent of even radio it's a challenge, but it's so rewarding when you can come across it. And sometimes all that is left is a fragment. I mean, I was in Yorkshire. I went to this person's farm. He's called Will Noble. You can look him up if you look up Will Noble Yorkshire, he's got a tremendous website and a performance presence and a Facebook page and a YouTube, and he does the folk thing. So I was doubtful that I would find anything too interesting, because he seemed obviously that he'd learned a great many songs from other people, not only his family, and he performed these songs and he got into the habit of making the festival circuits or whatever. Didn't seem to be what I was after, and he wowed me with his 2-part harmonies with his wife and his long Edwardian poems. And then I finally gently said, but do you remember what got you into singing in the first place? I mean, who in your family sung? And he had just a fragment of something he called the Prickety Bush, and he kind of like la 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 la, I didn't even remember half the words. Mm-hmm. Kind of got the chorus, and I was like, well, that's the Maid Freed from the Gallows. That's a child ballad from 500 or 600 years ago, if not more. So, despite the fact that he couldn't remember much, his uncle used to sing that to him when he was 2 or 3, and to be able to hear a song, to sit in a living room in 2022 and hear someone sing a song that has been passed down for hundreds of years in their family, just even the last few scraps, it's just neat to be able to say, yeah, that's still an unbroken tether back hundreds of years.
Now, what's your relationship to folk music? Because it seems like quite an undertaking. You clearly very well informed about all these songs and where they come from. And where does that come from with you personally? Is that something that happened in your family?
I think it's two things at once, which is, when I was like a teenager, remix culture was pretty fervent. The maxi single was sort of a ridiculous luxury of the mid-aughts. Everyone from, Gwen Stefani to Incubus were putting out maxi singles. And particularly, I was really interested of, starting my own music at the time, was learning production techniques, and so I would buy these, Madonna maxi singles with all the weird remixes no one listened to, and it was 7 tracks of the same, song remixed by different people, and I'd learn about producers this way, and that doesn't happen anymore. No one spends the money on CDs like that anymore. Mm. But I was always interested in kind of the weirder, white label remixes that no one had, and so I would kind of go on the online hunt for that one bad MP3 rip of the vinyl white label remix from not even the main mix, the dub or whatever. And so I became very classifying and organizing and librarian-esque about this process. And so I think that's sort of honed this muscle of like how many versions of a ballad are there, and where does it come from, and what's the outlier version, and what's the weird version from Oregon, and it's the only example from that state. It's sort of trained me to be able to hunt and peck in that way. But the other thing was my grandmother, who didn't sing, but she told stories and jokes and had an amazing recollection of all the various jobs she had and old blue bloods she'd met and worked for and the strange houses they kept. And she was 89 when I was 17, and so I began documenting her on my mobile phone, just whipping it out surreptitiously and recording her. And she lived to be 99, so I took 10 years of recordings of her. I didn't know when she was going to. You never know. And
Yeah.
and so that was very tied to memory and archiving, even though it wasn't music. And I eventually did something with some of these recordings when she passed away. They made them into an album of mine called Avia.
And they have windows with nice and bright. And so after she couldn't take care of me, she said, "You can take care of me, Dorothy, but won't be too hard. I used to have to take the cages and line them with the newspaper and then feed them. And they used to eat, some of the exotic ones would eat chopped eggs, and then they bought this kind of some kind of seaweed or something that they had mixed in with it.
This is Low Profile with Markley Morrison. If you're just joining us today, my guest is Derek Piotr, a folklorist and field recording scavenger based in Connecticut. We're talking today about his passion for preserving the old forms of oral tradition, and Derek is sharing pieces of his field work as well as his own songs. Back to the show.
I didn't realize when we first got in touch that you were a pretty prolific artist in the sort of, there's a lot of electronic and minimalism and experimental sort of textures and sound collage. You've got your Forest People pop record with all the affected singing.
And that was also an ode to folk music, but it was more Thai, Indonesian, Burmese folk music. The percussion was pretty intentionally bamboo-y, or I would actually buy and crunch up bamboo pipes and leaves and things to make the beats and rhythms. And that was me kind of imagining this hyper gloss pop thing, like a Sophie or a 100 Gex or Arca, but imagining it in a little hut somewhere in Malaysia. Kind of taking this like super cosmopolitan, manicured, modern pop situation and kind of giving it its scruffy little sister with uncombed hair and tears in the jeans and stuff, and kind of trying to take it to the next step and connect it with really its arch enemy, which is this very indigenous folk music that's primitive and timeless. To try and bring those two polar opposites together, that was sort of the aim of Forest People Pop. So in a way, I mean, folk music has been, it's just been creeping around the corners of my music for years, but I got really tired of electronic music, and I decided to focus entirely on folklore work. I don't really cut tracks anymore like that. I don't make beats.
You definitely got some miles when you were working on that, though. I mean, I noticed you got a collaboration with some heavy hitters. You got Kevin Drum, Stephen Matthew, and a bunch of folks whose names
Stefan and Kevin are really good friends of mine, and so I think it kind of happened like as a friend favor. Stefan and I go way back, and it's all kind of smeared. And if you talk to people like Stefan or Kevin Drum or Vladislav Delay. What do they all listen to? They listen to like Leadbelly and stuff. So I mean, it's it's like everyone loves this music anyway. They
Yeah.
just maybe don't make it so known. So I don't feel like there's been a transition too much in terms of this second kind of life I've had as a folklorist. But yeah, I certainly was kind of belonged to like the Matt Moses of the world for a long time or something.
It's funny. I never really thought about how that whole sonic universe maybe does have its roots in like some of the earliest recordings.
Well, working with the Herbert Halbert recordings of Lena and her family, it feels very much. There was a really good record AGF did in 2002 called Head/Bow, and AGF is Antje Graja, who is Vladislav Delay's wife. So if anyone pays attention to Vladislav Delay's work, that's his wife. It's this like fragile voice cut up and kind of splintered and sprinkled all over these hums and hisses and like loops of white and brown and pink noise, and very dusty, and that doesn't feel so far away from these archival recordings of people singing. It feels very much like a voice noise kind of thing, which is really an equation I find satisfying.
Yeah, it's got like sort of a warmth and depth to it.
So in many ways, I feel that this is full circle for me.
Yeah, I get that. Well, I was wondering if you could share the story of a scenario. One of the field recordings that you shared with me is Ilklimor Bartat by Gareth Coles.
I knew you were going to ask about this.
Yeah.
On Ilklimor Bartat, on Ilklimor Bartat, on Ilklimor Bartat. That will catch thee death a cold, on Ilklimor Bartat. That will catch thee death a cold. That will
Well,
catch thee death a cold.
when I got to York, I was mostly like thinking like ballads, and I was pretty brusquely discouraged by a colleague when we met in my garden that I was staying at, and I wasn't staying at a garden. The house had a garden, and he was like, you're not really gonna find ballads around here. And I said, well, we'll see. I'm gonna try. And I went several places and collected several things. But anyway, he turned out to mostly be right. But for whatever reason, I just hadn't brushed up on like the Yorkshire repertoire before I went, which was a bit stupid of me. But sometimes I like going places and not knowing anything, because then you can ask a more genuine question that way. So I remember my host family played me a YouTube video of Ilklimor Bartat, but I didn't. The title didn't register with me, or I just forgot. So I got to this bar, and this Gareth Coles, I think people called him Gary, he was a Morris dancer. And so someone introduced me to him, and folklore, Morris dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Not a big leap. And we were talking, and I said, do you sing? And he said, not really, I'm mostly a dancer. And we talked about the Morris dance piece Shirley Collins had put on her last record, and we talked about handkerchiefs and swords. And I said, so you really don't know any songs? Like, I was kind of hoping he would sing at least something. And he'd had quite a few beers at that point, and he said, well, there's one song I can sing, but I'm sure you have it already. And it's called Ilklimor Bartat. And I said, no, I don't think I haven't really taken too many recordings yet. And I love that recording because he stood up in front of the whole bar, and there's this drunk girl kind of egging him on, and
Mm-hmm.
but I found out pretty quickly after that is a really widely sung song in Yorkshire, and everyone's dad could sing that song, and so I stopped taking it. It infuriated some of my informants when I'd ask about, do you know anything other than Ilklimor Bartat, and they'd just be like, oh, I can't stand that song, and it's pretty annoying as a tune, actually. I'm not fond of it, but
Yeah. No,
when in Rome, I think I needed at least one example of that song, and what a stonker of an example. It's quite a dynamic field recording. It's really got a lot going on in it. So I'm glad I got it, but I don't need to take it again.
My favorite moment of that recording is when the lady just yells, "Wow, that was," and then he just keeps going.
Yeah,
A couple
he
more
was like,
verses.
"There's one more verse. I know a few more." Yeah,
O'Neill
yeah,
play more batatas. Then we shall all play at thee. O'Neill play more batatas. Then we shall all have and thee. Then we
yeah,
shall all
yeah. It was his moment, and I'm so glad I took it that way rather than just someone's dad singing it or something. Because
Yeah.
it turned out everyone knew that song, and so it just didn't seem worth taking again. But I'm glad I got at least one for sure.
Have you been approached very often now that you're sort of making a name for yourself in this field? Do people seek you out to share songs with you?
Yeah, a few times I'll get phone calls. I've put my contacts in the newspapers, similar to what you did with Edna Gibson. And I had this one man call me from North Carolina, and he's blind, but he is a descendant of Lulu Bell and Scotty, and so he sang me a couple, like When the Sun Goes Down Again, things like that he remembered his mother singing. I forget how he was related to Lulu Bell and Scotty. They might have been an aunt or an uncle of his. But I get, here and there people reach out. Someone has a fiddler in, I believe Indiana that they want me to go record. So yeah, it's starting to kind of reach back out to me, which is what I want ultimately.
Seems most of the work I've heard from you is focusing on unaccompanied singing.
That feels accurate. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm I'm always interested in, if someone really can play the spoons, I'd like to hear it. I'm just because I'm a vocalist, I'm always on the hunt for the song. I've also documented some jack tales, which are these long stories told in the mountains mostly. Came over from England. Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack Sprat. Jack being the central hero of the story. Obviously, there's many more than that. It's a tradition, and they're satisfying. But I prefer the music. So I don't know what draws me to the vocals so much, but if someone wanted to play me hurdy-gurdy solos for an hour, I would absolutely take it. It's just
Yeah.
I haven't been in that situation yet.
What's the music community like in your area? I know in the 80s Connecticut had like a pretty cool like a hip hop scene going on. And I'm just not really sure what like say the music heads are agreeing on in that realm.
Well, I went to high school with that Pear, Peaer. He records us. He's put out a couple records. He's like an indie musician, and I can remember him playing, old VFW halls or whatever for like an indie night. So there's a pretty vibrant indie scene. There's also a pretty vibrant noise scene, and they get along fairly well. I think a lot of people like have a band, but then on the weekends will, jump up and down on their guitar or something.
Yeah.
Everything turned to 11. So yeah, especially in New Haven, there's a lot of basement noise shows. It feels like Leeds in a way of like noise, crusty, and a lot of people from across the pond know each other. But yeah, I mean, I think it rings true what I said earlier. That there was nothing in the Library of Congress file cabinet for location Connecticut. Folk songs. It's just not a lot of people. It's a puritanical, waspy thing. People just don't sing here for some reason. Helen Flanders took very, very few recordings in Connecticut, even though she took thousands of recordings from New England. It was very, very few singers from Connecticut, actually. And if there were, they knew maybe one or two songs, generally. So, it's curious. I would love to meet a Connecticut ballad singer, but I haven't yet.
Like who's the audience for this in your mind?
Everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, as I've started to do before I was really actively doing field work, which is sort of where my practice has moved, And I was just sort of talking about these recordings that, Lena in the 1930s singing, Cindy and whatever, Sourwood Mountain, just in passing, everyone loves that kind of music, and everyone was really interested in hearing her do these, banjo pieces unaccompanied, and I think it's for everybody. And, I think that she has a certain star power anyway that is gravitational. People really seem to want to use her face and platform her voice, and she's graced the cover of a magazine already, and been, on WFMU and NTS. So, it's like, it's not really my story. It's just like, go Lena. I've got my little pennant flag, and I'm running the touchdown or something. Bad sports analogy. But, I'm the cheerleader for her. And, I think more broadly, people just don't know where to find this stuff. And if I can be the hand pointing to the moon, or whatever the Buddhist saying is, great. And then people can look at the moon. I have a friend who does back end for WFMU's, he's like, he gets the call on his beeper at 3 a.m. if the thing goes down or whatever. And he suggested that I try and pitch a freeform show for WFMU. And so my ambition was that I would do some crazy 3-hour jumble, and it would air at 4 a.m. and 2 people would hear it. And the director said, I don't want that. I don't want you to do a freeform show for me. And I thought, okay. And he said, I want you to do a regular show. I want you to provide documentation of what you're doing, and I want it to go on primetime this summer. So I need you to slow down. I don't want any crossfades between the tracks, and every few songs I want you to explain where that came from and what that person was doing, because these recordings are blowing my mind. And I had just been picking things out of like the Max Hunter repository or the Wolf Folklore Collection, and these are all available online as MP3s. But I think because people don't know where to look for them, they just have no clue that all this feral vocal folk exists. And so I didn't expect to wow him as much as I did. So I'm going to do a residency for WFMU this summer and
that's
explain
exciting.
a lot of these tracks. But, I do think that the audience is everyone. And I think people are really eager to find this stuff.
That makes perfect sense to me that WFMU would pick this up, and that you get to, share your insights, and just coming from someone who cares so deeply about these recordings and where they come from. Are there any countries that you'd like to explore that you don't have any background info on, or that you're just barely scratching the surface? I mean, where would you like to take this work in the future?
Well, for a long time I really did love Indonesian, Thai, Vietnamese folk music. Sublime Frequencies stuff.
Yes.
I don't know if I would go there and field record. I feel like that feels a bit tiger skin on the wall. I think it's more comfortable for me to work with other white people, for lack of a more delicate way to put that. It just feels less colonialist and invasive. And this work is already, you strive to make the informants into collaborators and give them equal footing, but it's still, I can struggle sometimes with how invasive it feels sometimes. Because anyway, that being said, the Maritimes are really interesting to me. I'd like to go to like Prince Edward Island, for instance, and see if anyone in a little shack still remembers these songs. Little old granny somewhere, making bouillabaisse or whatever. Canada is sort of next for me, perhaps, but I think America is so wide and weird that I could spend my whole life and not even scratch the surface of America. I mean, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Utah, Arizona had a couple of amazing... The Friends of Arizona Folklore label, which was very short-lived, put out a couple of amazing records of people doing things like the Kicking Mule and Red River Valley and the Little Mohi, but it's like an Arizona version. It's really, really interesting. I didn't know folk music kind of made it that far and kind of retained... Yeah, I mean, America, you could just run yourself into the ground doing, and I would, I'm always interested in those versions of ballads from, like the only New Hampshire version of that ballad and I'm like, why is that? And, where did it come from? So, I think I have my hands full already. I don't need to jet set.
Yeah, sure. There's plenty to dig for just in your own backyard.
That's it on M.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, I think that Canada. I have a lot of contacts in Newfoundland that I should go visit, and it would be really nice to do some recording up there. But I'm England was interesting because there was sort of not that many complete versions of things, but I would go back and do like Scotland and Ireland. I think that'd be interesting. But America, mainland America, and Canada, it seems like a worthy place to spend my time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's such a melting pot, just especially on the east coast of Canada. So many different cultures are represented there that I'm curious to where a lot of the overlap would be in that
Well, there were a
region.
lot of Scotch settlers, of course, and English, but also German. So one of my favorite people to read about was a little old man called Nathan Hatt, Hatt, and he couldn't read or write, and had no idea where his family came from. But Helen Crichton, who was a folklorist in Nova Scotia, did some digging on Nathan's behalf and found out that they were either HTT or ATT. There was someone named like At or Hat in the census, and they seemed to be of German descent. But nonetheless, he knew a lot of Anglo-American ballads like Lambkin or Young but Daily Growing or things like that. So regardless of their origin, I think Canada has quite a melting pot. Yeah, of it just seems to be people from all sorts of backgrounds kind of learn these songs. And in speaking with Anita Best, who's a folk singer from Newfoundland, I found out that it's considered impolite if you're in a social setting like a family gathering or a little house party by the fireplace. If you don't bring a song to sing, it's considered terribly impolite, and you should at least know one or two ballads that you can sing
I love that.
to bring to a gathering. So in that way, they've kind of forced the tradition to stay alive, and that's a non-singer if I've ever heard one. If you have to go over to Auntie May's house and you need to know Barbara Allen, well, you're going to learn it, whether you want to sing it or not.
I was in the merry month of May, when the green buds day was falling, sweet William on his deathbed lay, for love of Barbara Allen.
Do you practice music still? Do you like to learn these songs yourself? I know that you play a number of instruments.
Yeah, I've been a singer since I was little, and I was singing along to movies and stuff, and did a record last year called Making and then Unmaking, and there was one ballad on there that was traditional, and now I've got a new record that's almost done called The Devil Knows How, and it's almost entirely traditional music. The, the old Farmer's Cursed Wife and Hangman, and then I have two pieces on there that are kind of Avia-esque in that I took recordings of Lena and Lena's daughter and I set them to music because both ladies recalled vividly that their whole family would sit out at night, by the lamplight or by the fire and sing. They both said very, very similar things in these interviews, so I wanted to kind of mirror that. But otherwise, it's me singing traditional ballads that I've selected.
What's your sweet spot with instrument wise? What do you gravitate toward?
I like playing organ a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably my favorite thing. I mean, that's the thing I'm best at, is I can play keys pretty well. I can play winds a little bit still, and I used to be able to play strings, but yeah, keys. So I think having access to a pump organ with a lot of stops is like, I could spend all day doing that.
Yeah.
And it's pretty close to the human voice too, so go figure.
Definitely. I used to have a harmonium, man, and I just was on cloud nine whenever I'd be playing that thing.
Yeah, they're excellent. Harmonica too is, I think written off as kind of like a jailhouse sitcom instrument, but it's actually, a pretty incredible thing.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, so that's a bit of a nuisance to people nearby me, but I do enjoy busting out a harmonica once in a while too. Similar idea to a keyboard.
Mm-hmm. But it's so portable.
That's it, yeah, which is a wonderful, wonderful plus.
Do you mess with analog recording at all? Do you use tape ever?
Um, yeah, I'm really mad at myself because I left my batteries in this dictaphone I'd had for 10 years, and I came home from England and it was all green goop and it broke. So I'm having a really hard time finding a new one. I've bought two off eBay and they were both completely broken. Worked, quotes, but what worked meant the light turned on.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the admirers of my work for a long time has been Scott Solter, who is mixer to the gods. He's mixed records for St. Vincent and the Mountain Goats and Spoon, and has somehow got onto my music, and we've exchanged emails for years. And so I was doing the electronic thing, and he'd done some really nice murky remixes for me, like 7 years ago or whatever. But as I've been kind of leaning into the folk thing, he kind of took a deeper role and has been helping me produce these records, because I think he has a really, really special sense of texture and treatment of acoustic instruments. But he has a really holistic view of how instruments should sound, I guess. So it's a very long answer to your question, but for The Devil Knows How, this new record, I was so inspired by all these folk collections online of varying fidelity, and I said, without making it an old-timey record, I'd really be interested to play with different fidelity and different tape situations. And he's got at his disposal different tape decks and reel-to-reel machines and wire recorders and all these. And so we've given each track on the record a slightly subtle patina, sometimes not so subtle. But I've tried to kind of give it the sense of a collection that evolved over time with the advent of different recording instruments. So without making it like a handlebar mustache, fixie bike, Victrola situation, just tried to give it sort of a dip it slightly in time. So that's been a lot of fun. So yeah, I mess with tape is the short answer.
I'd love to hear some of that Devil Knows How record.
I will send you a private link. By the time this goes out, it may have been released, but I'm aiming for the summer, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, can the listener hear something from that right now? Is there a particular
let's
track?
we'll put on I'm Going Back to North Carolina, and here it is, folks.
I'm going back to North Carolina. I'm going back to North Carolina. I'm going back to North Carolina. And I never expect to see you anymore. My home's across the Blue Ridge Mountains. My home's across the Blue Ridge Mountains. My home's across the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I never expect to see you anymore. Oh, how can I keep from crying? Oh, how can I keep from crying? Oh, how can I keep from crying when I never expect to see you anymore?
Do you plan on touring for this work?
God, I hope so. You know, the pandemic has been severely crippling on that front. It's been amazing to get any of the informant work done at all that I've been doing. I gave a library lecture last week that was the kickoff of like a library tour, so I'm kind of speaking about this work and these recordings, more to invite people to come forward and share their own stories.
Yeah, that's great.
But as far as performing, I'm gonna be in North Carolina this summer, and I expect to do several shows. So it'll be nice to be back in the saddle, so to speak.
And then you've got your on the side when you're traveling, you can continue to do your folklore work. That's like a real advantage when you can be multitasking on the road, like how I did that whole Carter family tribute,
Which is just amazing. I've sent that to like everyone. I sent that to so many friends when you told me about that. It was mind blowing.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing to have an extracurricular activity that I could be just excited to just jump on. I don't want to toot my own horn here too much, but
this think deserves to be, tooted or touted or whatever you want to call it, because the fact that you found the people performing a Carter family song organically and went up to them, it's just an incredible.
Yeah, this is a guy named Brian Hayes. When we were in Kentucky getting an oil change, I was collecting Carter family songs mostly by bands and artists that we had some kind of connection to. But this was just, I was wandering around the parking lot and he was playing in front of a department store and he happened to be playing the Wildwood Flower.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me his email address, but I must have heard it wrong or he must have said it wrong because it just came right back to me. So I was never able to share the recording with him, but it happened. And it was just such a joy to like.
Run my fingers waving black hair with lilies so pale and roses so fair. Riding red with the emerald king and pale wildwood flowers with eyes right blue. Told her I loved her, she was proud. Then I lost in blue for every hour. I left her, lost her, tell you it's true. Pale wildwood flowers, eyes right blue.
It's such a celestial like tunnel, and that's how these things happen sometimes. It's just you put that intention out and then the world kind of cooperates. I won't bore you, but I have so many little tiny stories like that surrounding like Lena and her family where things have just come together and it's perfect. It's this like celestial reach.
Well, I don't think you're gonna bore me. If you wanna give me a story of a serendipitous moment.
The nicest one I think of is Lena had been featured on these compilations put out by the Library of Congress, but they also, for some reason, put out these 78 singles. And so she was the A side, and then a version of The Three Babes was the B side, and it was like this weird 78 single that existed for some reason. And before I'd gotten the other recordings of her, that was like, I wanted to bring this to her daughter as like a gift, but it was like a really rare 78. Only 2 people on Discogs said they had it, and like 1 million people said they wanted it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I messaged both of the accounts. It was not for sale. I should say that. It was not offered for sale. It's just 2 people had it in their collection. And 1 person did not reply. So the other person, out of 2, his first question to me was, well, what are the other ones in the series that you have? He was kind of looking at it from like a collector's bent, and fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't have any of the other 78s in this Library of Congress singles series. I would like to give this to Lena's daughter. Oh, well, that changes everything. And so he sent it for free by post. And when I got the package, turned out he was only in New Jersey, so not very far away from me.
Oh, wow.
So it's still we both need to really get our schedules together. But I've become friends with him, and we should have lunch someday. But 78s are often jealously guarded by people, and there's a book on this called "Do Not Sell at Any Price." Says it all in the title.
Yeah.
So it was nothing short of a miracle that this person was fairly local and was willing to part with this record for nothing, you know. So that's one, just that comes to mind of the universe just kind of cooperating around these singers in their lives.
Killer. Okay, well, man, I kind of feel like we did it. How do you feel? Do you have any more anything else you want to get into?
That was a nice note to end on, I think. But if anyone out there is listening and they're like, "Oh yeah, my grandma used to sing this one song," even if it's just a bit of one song, or your aunt, please write either Markley or myself. d@derekpiotr.com. It would be wonderful to, the thing that keeps me going on this work is the stories that I get back. So if anyone wants to be in touch, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that people out there have something that falls in line with this, even if it's remembering a lullaby and they're not sure where it came from.
Yeah, no song too big or small. Please write in to either Markley or myself, because even if it was just a piece of Barbara Allen, I'd be curious what your way of Barbara Allen was. That's a song that's been sung to death, but maybe it's a melody I've never heard before. You just don't know. I'd love to hear it.
Well, Derek, thank you so much for your time and for the hard work you're doing, the good work. This is really important, really important stuff.
I'm so glad we connected, because very, very kindred, which is uncommon, I think, to be so into this shuttered away singer kind of bent. It's really a treat to be able to talk about this stuff with you.
Absolutely. I hope to catch you for lunch sometime.
Oh, it'll happen.
Yeah.
I have faith.
All right. Well, lots of love. And where can the listener find more about your work?
So the derekpiotr.com. If you take the d@ away, that's my website as well, derekpeter.com. That's derekpiotr.com on the World Wide Web.
This has been the 65th episode of Low Profile with Markley Morrison. Thanks again to Derek Peter for joining me on today's show, and if you'd like to explore his work, you can find links to it on this episode's webpage at lowprofilepodcast.com. The illustrations for each episode on this season of Low Profile are by Lonnie Morrison. Thanks a lot for listening, and if you enjoyed the show, it never hurts to tell a friend or share this program with others online. Jack Habiger's Celebrity Telethon is up next here on KAOS 89.3 Olympia Community Powered Radio.